Welcome to our last week together, everybody. This is week 8. So the handout was emailed to you either last night or this morning, but the link as usual is in the chat as well. So you can grab it there if you need it. Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet in a sense. I'm excited that we've gotten through these 8 weeks and kind of gotten to know some of you a little bit better and seen some familiar names every week. But it's also kind of sad we're on our last one. I guess as we start usually, I want to know if anyone has a mindful moment that they want to share from this week, or something that they've maybe actually I'm going to specify the question of maybe over the last 8 weeks, have you noticed something different from doing this and from kind of being more mindful and increasing your mindfulness throughout your lives? And if not, that's okay too, but you can just share a mindful moment. But I'm just curious if anyone has noticed any differences or any changes from the past 8 weeks. Great, Lori, more calm and less upset. That's great. Great, Erin. I find that's one thing that I've become way more mindful of, is just when I'm holding tension. I really notice that now too. Great, Cindy. Being more intentional about maybe the way that you're practicing it, and again, appreciating the efforts about it. Great. Was there any particular topic that you felt was the most helpful for you, or any particular week that you found the most helpful? Great. That's an awesome idea, Marie-Pierre. That's mindful check-ins are awesome, because again, it just allows you to give yourself a moment if you need it, and being able to acknowledge that you might need a moment. And because oftentimes we get into that mindless state and we're too busy and we forget about ourselves. So that's great. Awesome, Monique. Positive journaling is a great tool, and I'm glad that you were able to take that on and feel more appreciative towards yourself. That's great. Makes me happy to hear that you guys have taken stuff away from this group and that it has been helpful for you. Yeah, that's my kind of takeaway from all of this, is just the impact that it has on you guys and being able to make some changes in your life. So I appreciate you guys all being here, and especially all your participation. It's been really wonderful. So let's dive in. So today our topic today is putting it all together. So it's just a kind of summary of things that we have been talking about over the last 8 weeks. If anyone has any questions about particular topics or things they want more information on, I welcome any questions as we go through, anything that comes up. And otherwise, yeah, we'll just kind of get through the day and say our goodbyes. So the skills that we've learned over the past 8 weeks, they will grow stronger the more that you practice them. If you engage in these things each day, they're going to get bigger. They're going to become more prominent in your life. They're going to become more habitual for you. And this is going to help, again, strengthen that attention retraining aspect. It's going to strengthen that muscle in our minds, that mindfulness muscle. Conversely, if you don't practice these skills, if you don't use these skills every day, similar to any skill that we have, if we don't use it, we lose it. It'll slip further from your grasp in a sense, and it'll become more and more difficult to use them and to practice those skills. So it's really important, I guess the takeaway from this is just to practice and keep practicing what you're doing. Try and incorporate it into your life as best as you can. I'm sure all of you have been doing that this past 7-8 weeks, but if you haven't been practicing as much, maybe this is a kind of a reminder to, as long as you keep practicing, the better it will be, the more effective it will be, and the more positive benefits you'll see from it as well. So when we stop practicing and we stop kind of putting that intention to do these things, they won't become choices anymore, and they won't be real change. It'll just be kind of something you think about every once in a while, but you don't actually do. They'll become ideas, something that maybe you don't even remember to do every day or not recall. And again, when that happens, they have little effect to help you. So mindfulness skills really do require practice. Otherwise, they're magic in helping us with our emotions and helping us feel more positive and helping us feel more happy over time, and just more calm, and just generally have us increase our sense of well-being. The less you practice, the less you'll have that positive benefit from it. So this will require sustained effort. Like I mentioned early on, even the most practiced of mindfulness, people who practice mindfulness the most often, even they have days where they struggle with it. Even they have periods of time where they're not practicing at their best. But this is something to expect. It's not something to suggest that you're failing or that you're not doing a good enough job. This is just part of the process. It's part of practicing something all the time, right? You can't always be perfect at it. You can't always be receiving, 100% benefit from it. There's an old saying that victory belongs to the most persevering, which is exactly kind of what we need right now as we kind of finish up our 8 weeks and we're moving out of our kind of weekly routine, of coming into these sessions and learning more and kind of getting that weekly reminder to practice mindfulness. Now it's kind of being put on all of you to say, you know what, I'm going to take this on. And even though I don't have to come to these webinars every week, I'm still going to use these practices in my daily life. A commitment, right? A commitment to that practice and commitment to practicing those skills daily over time. Some of us may even find ourselves wondering or worrying maybe where you'll find the motivation to keep doing something so challenging, because again, sometimes mindfulness can be extremely challenging. I find myself sometimes, depending on the day, depending on where I'm at, depending on how I slept, because I tend to do my mindfulness and meditations in the morning, but depending on a ton of different factors, I'll have a great meditation or I can have a really bad meditation. I notice my mind is busy the whole time. And so it just really depends on the day, but it's all about, again, just persevering and also giving yourself some compassion and saying, hey, even though it didn't feel the best today, even though I didn't maybe get as much benefit from it today, at least I still did it. I still kept the habit. I still engaged in the activity and I still got something from it, whether I can kind of identify that or not. So I think it's all the conversation about moving forward and moving into a direction of kind of taking these skills on for yourself and reminding yourself that it doesn't have to always be great, but it's still, practicing it in general can still be helpful for you. And again, reminder to be self-compassionate and have a little bit of kindness for yourself on days where it doesn't seem the best. So again, when we talk about practice, I think when we talk about that, we're talking about incorporating it into our daily lives. Again, we mentioned this quite early on in terms of that first week, we were asked you to kind of practice something daily, even for 5 minutes. So it shouldn't, I guess, require too much willpower to continue doing the things that you've been doing and to continue to include the mindfulness activities that you have been using in your daily lives now. But it does require getting into the habit of it. So that may be a tricky thing sometimes to form a new habit. It takes, I think, like 30 days or something like that, or 21 days. I don't remember the exact number. But it definitely is a habit that requires effort. It requires patience on the part of yourself. And spending about 15 minutes a day practicing that skill is kind of that sweet spot, I guess, of noticing really great benefits from it. We like to use the metaphor of cultivating a garden in terms of thinking about practicing mindfulness. So a garden flourishes when certain conditions are present. So same as mindfulness, when our practice can flourish when we hold certain qualities. holding certain qualities in our minds, reflecting on them and cultivating them according to kind of our best understanding, this will nourish and support and strengthen our practice as best as we can. So using that idea of a garden, right? We have to tend to a garden. We have to tend to our plants in order for them to survive. It's 66 days. Thank you, Cindy. I didn't realize it was that long. So yeah, it's about tending to the skill, just as we would tend to a garden, just as we would tend to our children, right? It's a skill that needs attention. It needs some nourishment. It needs some like love and care, I guess. So by allowing yourself to tend to this garden, it helps you channel your energies into those mindfulness skills and into practicing them. And then this can, again, channel energies into the process of healing and growth. Mindfulness is all about tuning into what's happening for you, tuning into your emotions, to your body. And these are the ways that we begin the process of healing. So for any of us who have been struggling with emotions, or any of us who've been going through some mental health struggles, this is mindfulness, and knowing how to utilize it to the best of your ability is a way to heal. It's a way to begin that process of understanding yourselves a little bit better, understanding your body, tuning into your emotions, and giving yourself the compassion that you need, because you're not stuck in that overwhelm. You're kind of present and able to recognize what's going on for you. Yeah. Okay. So the practice, like we said, of mindfulness is like cultivating that garden. So there, again, are certain conditions that we're going to be talking about in terms of that garden, or flourishing our garden, and the conditions that require are, again, keeping in mind the different attitudes that we're talking about here as part of this mindfulness training. We have to, as we listed on the board here, oh gosh, on the screen, we have non-judging, we have patience, beginner's mind, trust, non-striving, acceptance, letting be. So non-judging, every day we judge things. We judge people, we judge events that come into our lives. We tend as humans to be judgmental, or we're making constant comparisons or criticisms, or kind of categorizing things as good or bad, or it's just a natural tendency of our brains to do that, because we're I guess trained in some ways to label things, to understand them, to categorize them. So that involves a judgment. We label things as good because they make us feel good for some reason, whatever that reason might be. And other things are labeled very quickly as bad because they make us feel bad. So our judgments that we use to label things and categorize them actually don't necessarily serve us all the time, because it's a snap judgment. It's not a, we talked about this, I think, a little bit in 1 week, but it's not taking a general overview of things. It's just taking one instance that it kind of takes that snap instant to make you have a judgment on something, or label it as maybe something bad. But in reality, that's just the one situation or one circumstance that you experienced it in, and it wasn't the best. But does that make it bad all the time? So I guess, again, reflecting on why it is that we have certain judgments that we have, why it is that we label things the way that we do, and maybe reflecting on the reasons why we do that, and be curious about maybe is there an other alternative, or are we kind of generalizing, and we can maybe be better at that. So the rest of things, even if we don't categorize them as good or bad, we kind of categorize them as neutral, because we don't think it has as much relevance. So these neutral events are kind of kicked out of our consciousness. We don't even really recognize them. They don't stay there very long to even pay attention to them. And when we do, we find them boring. So neutral events, or things that don't kind of catch our attention in some way or another, are just kind of like, meh, like I don't really want to pay attention to these. But again, when we make these quick judgments, so just as we can make a quick judgment about something being good or bad, if we make a quick judgment on something that may be neutral or boring, then again, we're in that autopilot mode. We're not being conscious and thoughtful and intentional about our categorization there. And we're not necessarily seeing a full picture. We're just making those quick snap judgments, which I mean is helpful in certain instances. And I'm not saying that your snap judgment is wrong all the time, but again, being curious about it and allowing yourself to maybe explore an alternative option to something can be really helpful in experiencing new things. Because I can think of an example of maybe you, even something as simple as a food, right? You don't like a certain type of food because as a kid, you had that food and maybe you got sick or you just really hated it as a kid, but your palate changes over time, just as your likes and dislikes will change over time and evolve with you as you get new experiences. So something that you may have hated years ago, you may not hate anymore or dislike anymore in the present because you've changed, you've gotten new perspectives. So again, always challenging those kind of labels that we have on things can be really helpful to enhance our lives in certain ways that maybe we kind of, again, don't really pay attention to all that much. So by doing that, if we do enter into that autopilot mode and just kind of categorize and label things as we tend to do, we stop experiencing our lives fully, right? Again, autopilot, we're not really kind of in the present moment. We're not experiencing and enhancing our lives in any way. We just kind of coast through our days. And we get so caught up in the things that we like or dislike that it does create a difficulty finding peace. It's important to recognize that this judging quality of our mind when we practice mindfulness. So the next time you find yourself thinking when you are practicing mindfulness, like, this is boring, this isn't working for me today, I can't do this, realize that that's just your mind judging yourself. It's just your mind kind of falling into that judging narrative. And it's not, can you challenge that in the moment? Can you say, hey, you know what, maybe it is boring. maybe it isn't working as best as it could, but I can do this and I can stay in this moment and just try my best. So again, that comes with that self-compassion piece for sure. You don't have to, we're not saying here that you have to stop judging completely. Because again, judgments can be helpful. And again, when you're in a situation with maybe new people or new experiences, I mean, that instant kind of quick judgment is necessary in terms of understanding, is this a safe situation? Is this a safe person, right? We need those quick kind of judgment calls. However, if you don't challenge those things or look at them further, maybe later on when you're not in that situation and don't reflect on them further, then that can lead to the kind of those snap judgments that have they're not really reflecting the fact of the situation. They're just reflecting maybe a feeling or an emotion that came up. And it kind of goes back to that idea of being on autopilot, not necessarily having that conscious thought. So it's important that we turn off that autopilot, we become curious about our judgments or curious about our labels, and we start to experience the moment in order to fully experience life as a whole. So our next one here is patience. So patience is a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. And that we can't force anything, or if we try to force it, sometimes that leads to maybe a negative outcome, and that things really are on their own path and on their own timeline. And even other people are on their own path and their own timeline. We cultivate patience towards our minds and bodies when we practice and engage in mindfulness. We intentionally remind ourselves that there's no need to be impatient with ourselves, because we find that the judging mind that's happening kind of all the time. We're able to recognize that, or maybe even when we're noticing that we might be agitated or frightened or anxious, or because we've been practicing for a while and nothing seems to be happening, we might be impatient with ourselves in moments where we go through a bump in the road, or we're kind of I don't like this term, but we go through a setback, right? So patience is really important to offer ourselves in these moments, because it's not that we're going through a setback. It's just that, you're just having a day, and it doesn't have to generalize to being a total kind of back step. It just means that today wasn't the best day, and tomorrow is a whole new experience that you get to experience when you get there. So when we give ourselves room to have the experiences of experiencing our feelings, whether that be good or bad. So whether you might be feeling anxious, maybe you're feeling happy, depending, whatever it is, to give yourself the permission to feel those things and have those experiences. Or again, have the experience of maybe a lull in your practice, your mindfulness practice. It's really important to give yourself the room for these things, because again, it's part of the journey, it's part of the process. And it's, again, it kind of brings up that idea of like, why are we trying to rush to a certain destination? Why are we trying to rush to get to a better place at a better time, or kind of rush to an end, kind of this goal end state that we're trying to get to? If we're taking mindfulness, for example, and the practice of mindfulness, and we're thinking that we need to get to a level where we're super good at it, we have no issues, and it's incorporated into our life fully, and we're just this mindful, peaceful kind of human all the time. But why is that the end goal? Why can't we just enjoy the process and enjoy the journey of it, and recognize that each moment in life is special and unique, and even the maybe quote unquote boring ones or neutral ones. So the third quality here is beginner's mind. So we tend to take for granted the ordinary, and we fail to grasp the extraordinary of the ordinary. So to see the richness of the present moment, we need to create what's called a beginner's mind. So this is a quality of our mind that is willing to see everything as it is for the first time. An open beginner's mind allows us to be receptive to new possibilities, and it prevents us from getting stuck in the rut of our own experiences, or our own expertise, I guess, that we've developed over time because we've been practicing forever. And this can also lead to kind of that tendency to think that it knows more than it does. So when we feel that we're an expert on something, we feel there's nothing new to learn about it. But mindfulness and mindful practice and meditation and doing all these things, that's going to change for you at all times, right? There's always something new to learn, or something new to engage in. So the next time you see somebody familiar to you, maybe ask yourself if you're seeing this person with fresh eyes, as this person really is in the present, or are you seeing this person from the reflection of your own thoughts about this person, and your own feelings as well? Are you living in past experiences with them, or are you taking in the present moment with them as they are in this moment and allowing that to just be what it is? You can also try this with problems as they arise as well. So try it next time when you're walking around. Are you able to see the sky? Are you able to see the stars? Maybe it's nighttime, or the sun if it's the daytime. Are you able to see the trees, notice the water, the rocks, and everything as they are right now, with a clear kind of uncluttered mind? Or are you only seeing them through the cloudiness of your own emotions, your own feelings, your own thoughts and opinions? And again, this is the same with problems, right? Are you able to see things in the moment as they are, without clouding them with previous experiences or your own thoughts and processes about it? And that's a difficult thing to get to, because again, a lot of times problems, when they come up, it is because they're triggering something old from the past. And that's normal. That happens. But it's about, again, recognizing that and seeing, okay, right now I'm seeing this from the lens of a past experience or a past trigger or some feeling. Maybe it's anger, right? You're seeing it through a lens of that. So can I put that aside for just a moment and think of, well, what's happening right now in this moment, and how can I see it from a new perspective? I like to kind of, I guess, equate that beginner's mind to a learner perspective. When you are a student, you're kind of taking everything, you're like a sponge, right? You're really absorbing all the information, you're taking it all in, and you're really eager, and you're open to new experiences, and you're open to learning new things, and to taking on new perspectives. So when you're in a position of being a learner rather than being the teacher, it can help you, again, be more curious about things, be more open to new perspectives and taking new things on. So it's similar to that beginner's mind, I guess, in a sense. Instead of being being, not necessarily that you can't be a teacher and still be open and curious, but I'm just saying when you're in that perspective of I know everything and I've kind of reached my end goal where I've learned everything I need to learn, that's when you start to lose out on new opportunities to, again, take on more information or evolve your practice or be open to maybe something new that comes up. So that next topic there is trust. So in practicing mindfulness, you're practicing taking responsibility for being yourself and learning to listen and trust your own being. So the more you cultivate this trust in yourself, the easier you'll find it to trust other people. And the more you're able to trust yourself again, the more able you're going to be able to see the basic goodness in other people as well. So, excuse me. It's far better to trust your own intuition than it is to look outside yourself for guidance, even if we make some mistakes along the way. So that part of mindfulness practice and part of building this skill is, again, to be able to tune into yourself, tune into what you're really feeling and how you're actually doing, and maybe the thoughts that you're actually having about something. And by doing this and by having this awareness of self, you're going to be able to make more decisions for yourself rather than relying solely on the opinions and ideas of somebody else. So learning to trust yourself is a really great kind of consequence, I guess, of practicing mindfulness all the time. We have non-striving. So almost everything we do, we tend to do for a purpose. So we have somewhere to go or we have an errand to run. In meditation, this can be a real hurdle. I'm sure many of us can relate to the idea of when we're sitting there and we're meditating, we're kind of running through, okay, I have to get this done, or I have to go here next, or you're running through kind of your schedule of the day, or maybe you're running through the things that you have to get done later, right? So we're always kind of planning ahead or kind of thinking to our next destination. So meditation is really it's ultimately a non-doing. So which goes against our ingrained pattern of we always have to be doing. If we're not doing, then we're lazy, or we're not doing enough, or we're never going to get anywhere, or we're going to fail. All those kind of blanket statements, I guess you could say. So with meditation, with it being a non-doing, and it's really taking a moment of pause and rest, and there's no goal other than to be who you are right now in the moment with your meditation and to focus on your breath and all those things, that can be really challenging and really tricky to stop that kind of non-striving mentality that we tend to have on a day-to-day basis. For example, if you sit down and you say, I'm going to get relaxed from this, I'm going to get enlightened or become a better person, then you've already introduced an idea into your meditation. You, instead of just allowing yourself to be in the meditation and to take in whatever that moment has for you in that time, you've introduced an intention, I guess, or an idea that you need something from this. So if you may be feeling in pain, you will feel the pain. If you're tense, you'll feel that tension. If you feel all the criticisms, praise, joy, and sorrow, and it holds it in your awareness. So, and then you're able to let it go. So continuing to allow your mind to be blank, acknowledge the feelings and thoughts as they come up, and then let them go with your breath and allow your mind to return to that peaceful state. So again, it's not to say that it's not helpful to have an intention of your practice, but sometimes that can, again, take away from the present moment and what that moment has to offer you, right? So we might, if we're so focused on, okay, I want to be relaxed, I want to be more peaceful. Not that that's a bad thing to want for ourselves, but if we continue to do that and continue to introduce that kind of need for something or need for a purpose of the moment, then again, we might not be able to tune into what's happening for us in that moment because we're stuck on that idea of what we're trying to get from it, if that makes sense. So sometimes it might be helpful to just go into the moment and go into your meditation or your mindfulness practice without any expectations and just to be and just to allow yourself to be and see what comes up then. If feelings come up, that's okay. Feel them, notice them, have them in your awareness, and then you're able to like let it go and come back into that present and come back into your breath and go along with your meditation. So when you don't have a purpose, it allows things to come up as like in a natural way rather than kind of forcing it or pulling on strings, I guess. So we have acceptance. So acceptance means seeing things as they actually are in the present. So if you have a headache, accept that you have a headache. So sooner or later, we have to come to terms with things as they are and accept it, whether it is something as challenging and as difficult and as terrible as a diagnosis of cancer or illness, or learning of somebody's passing. Often acceptance is reached only after we've gone through really emotion-filled periods of denial and pain and anger and those kind of stages of grief. So these stages are a natural progression of acceptance and of coming to terms with things the way that they are. So instead of avoiding the truth, embrace it. Look for opportunities of growth rather than only seeing the negative and painful. And that's not to say that we can't acknowledge the negative and the painful, because that's important too, and to acknowledge the whole facet of emotions that you might be feeling in the face of a big challenge or a big kind of overwhelming emotion. But to also recognize maybe if you're focusing or only attending to the negative emotions and not able to see maybe where there are opportunities for growth, or there are opportunities for joy or positive feelings too. So acceptance does not mean that you have to like everything. It doesn't have to mean that, you know, you're happy about whatever you're facing. Acceptance is more about, it's about being in the present and about acknowledging that it is what it is. This is what's happening right now. And I can either kind of be here and take a passive attitude towards everything and kind of abandon maybe myself and my principles and my values because I'm so overwhelmed with everything. Or I can decide to accept that this is what I'm dealing with in the moment, and take it as maybe nothing more or nothing less, and just notice how can I, again, going back to that idea of maybe, yes, I acknowledge that this is hard and it's painful and it doesn't feel good, but can I also acknowledge maybe where there's some positives or some moments for growth there too. When we appreciate the moment that we're given and make it special and positive, and again, by staying in the present rather than living in the past or the future, we're able to take more in about the beauty of the moment and recognizing maybe what we have in the moment and able to be grateful for those things. So the only thing we can ever be sure of is that in the moment that this is going to change. The present moment is great. It's wonderful. There's lots to offer, but it's always going to change and move forward. So by focusing on that sense of being alive in the moment, we can practice accepting whatever is that will emerge from the next moment as well. So if we think about that inflexibility that comes with always planning ahead and always looking to the next moment, when we're not able to be in the present and we kind of are stuck in that mental loop and stuck in either the past or the future, it makes it really hard to accept what comes up in the moment, each moment. And that's why we get kind of flustered and we get overwhelmed, and we may have negative feelings associated with things as well. So lastly, we have letting be. So when we start paying attention to our inner experiences, we really quickly discover that there are certain thoughts, feelings, and situations that the mind seems to want to hold on to. If they're pleasant, we try to prolong these feelings or thoughts. Or situations, we try to stretch them out and really conjure them up over and over again. We kind of get maybe lost in that idea of chasing after this certain feeling because we had it once and we want it again. So we're kind of always trying to recreate this idea or this sensation that we had at one point. Similarly, we can also have many thoughts and feelings and experiences that we try and get rid of or prevent ourselves from having because they are unpleasant, painful, or frightening, or anxiety producing. So in one way or another, we want to protect ourselves from them. In meditation practice or mindfulness, we intentionally put aside the tendency to elevate some aspects of our experiences and reject others. So again, when we're constantly maybe striving for a certain feeling or rejecting another feeling, we're never actually, being with whatever is coming up for us. So instead, through mindfulness and meditation, we just let our experience be what it is and practice observing it from moment to moment. So if you're feeling sad, maybe allow yourself, as in your meditation, if you're feeling kind of down that day, allow yourself in that meditation that you're doing or your mindfulness practice to just be with that feeling and really see where it is coming from, what thoughts pop up when you're able to kind of quiet your mind and really tune into it. What sensations in your body do you feel? Where do you hold tension from it? And again, how can you maybe give yourself that acceptance of that feeling and allow it to come through, and then also allow it to pass and kind of move through you, because again, emotions, like we talked about, are temporary. So letting go is part of that idea of letting be. So of accepting things as they are. So letting go is not really a foreign experience to us. We do it every single night when we go to sleep. We let go of the day that we had and we kind of welcome a new day after we go to sleep. So we lay down on our mattresses, on our beds, and when lights go out, we're in a really quiet space and we let go of our mind and body and we fall asleep. I'm sure we can all relate to moments where we can't let go and then we struggle to fall asleep. So we letting go is something that we're constantly being faced with. We're letting go every night to go to sleep. But this is, again, we kind of take that experience for granted in the sense that we're not used to it. We're not used to recognizing that that's what it is when we go to sleep. So most of us have experienced, again, those moments where our mind just won't shut down, we can't let go, and we have really struggled to fall asleep. So this is one of the first signs of elevated stress. If you're noticing that you really struggle to fall asleep because your mind is busy and you can't really let go, that's a really big sign there that maybe there's a lot of stress in your life, and maybe there's things that you're stuck on and things that you might need to pay more attention to and be curious of. When times like these come up, we may be unable to free ourselves from the certain thoughts because of our involvement with them, and they're just too powerful. If we try and force ourselves to sleep, it can only make things worse. I can definitely relate to that feeling of getting really frustrated because I'm trying to fall asleep and I can't. And it's like 3 a.m. and I'm just exhausted, but I can't sleep. It's a vicious cycle, right? When you're trying to force yourself to sleep, it actually just probably makes it worse. So if you can go to sleep, and you don't necessarily struggle to go to sleep, and maybe you have periods in your life where, this is going to fluctuate again based on a bunch of external factors. But if you can go to sleep, then you're already being good at practicing that idea of letting go. So it's not that this is a totally new skill that you have to practice. So you just have to start applying that skill of letting go into kind of daily life or waking life as well. Okay. So a topic that's important here to kind of go over is resistance. So in the context of mindfulness practice, we can have resistance in the context of mindfulness practice can be a wake-up call. It's bringing into awareness those aspects of our daily life that we do habitually resist. And we begin to, when we notice that awareness and we have that feeling of resistance and we can pick up on it, that's when we can begin to work on transforming them. So if we take a couple moments to consider your own habitual resistance, is there some situation or task or some person or event that you commonly find yourself faced with, but which you don't really like? It can be something as mundane as taking out the trash, but the main thing that we're looking for is that quality of aversion or something that you don't like. And the repetition it's that you constantly find yourself facing, doing this again and again, but constantly coming up with I hate this, or I really don't want to do this. Does anyone have an example of that? Washing the dishes. Yes, that's a good one. Yeah. I find for me, it's vacuuming or sweeping. I always find some resistance to that one. So now that we kind of have maybe a situation or something in mind, let's consider it mindfully, right? Let's think about, okay, well, start with the body. So as you hold that image of your resistance, explore the feeling that comes up in your body. What is it that pops up when you start exploring or tuning into your body with that image of maybe doing the dishes or vacuuming, what that comes in mind? For me, even as I said that, I noticed like a kind of like a heavy, weird feeling in my chest, oddly. So when you start to kind of tune into that, what do you start to notice? What are you feeling? Maybe describe it to yourself. Is it a heaviness, shallow breathing, contraction, deflated? Yeah. So next we can consider any collateral effects in the mind. So maybe some negative thoughts that come up, imaginings, maybe fears. So watch out for these and the other emotions that may arise from exploring this resistance as well. So I think for you, Erin, that deflated feeling is a fear or an emotion that's arising from imagining doing that task. And then we have to consider what our usual reaction is. So as we kind of notice our feelings and maybe some tension in our body or where it begins and the thoughts that come along with it or fears, what's our usual reaction to it? Do we do it grudgingly? Do we try and distract ourselves? Do we shut down? Do we procrastinate? How do we cope with maybe we haven't ever noticed we get a feeling before we don't do the task or don't want to do the task. And again, noticing what the reaction is to it. Do we get grouchy that we have to do it and maybe start to kind of feel kind of resentful towards our partners for not helping out or not doing it with us or not doing it for us, right? Is what kind of thought, again, noticing all the different things that are coming up on when we start to feel or get presented with the idea of doing the dishes, what comes up from that idea. So now as we kind of have that in our awareness, and we can see our personal resistance, see if you can allow that awareness to kind of like equalize your aversion or soften that resistance. So you don't have to kind of force it or strain to do this, but just enter into whatever it is that you find yourself resisting at the moment. And if judgments or additional resistances come up, notice them. And then if nothing shifts or changes, that's all right too. But just notice whatever is happening for you when you start to kind of bring to mind those resistances and bring to mind those things that we really don't like to do. So now, as we kind of have explored this a little bit more deeply than maybe we have in the past, it's important to kind of give yourself a mental acknowledgement to whatever resistance you've been exploring. And then again, kind of let it go, let it kind of ease from your mind and just kind of come back to a neutral place. So as we've been talking about, and I'm sure these are nothing here is a new topic for us. These are all things that are daily practices and in essence are exercises and a regimen to maintain our emotional and psychological health. So the practice has five parts, this daily practice. And some of us, again, might be already doing these things or practicing them already. But we have mindfulness, deep relaxation, self-observation, affirmation, and then committed action. So the daily practice, when we do all 5 of those steps, takes about 15 minutes. They should be done ideally at the same time of each day. So then you can, again, introduce that idea of a healthy habit if you're doing it at the same time every day, or just maybe same time of day. So choose a period in your day when you can be alone and you have a little bit of quiet. For some of us, that may be difficult if you have young kids around, but just do your best, I guess, in that regard. It could be just after your morning coffee or in your workspace just before going to lunch. It could be how you de-stress when you come home at night or part of your bedtime routine. So whatever time you choose, that's okay. It doesn't really matter the time, but as long as it's something that's sustainable for you and that you're able to stick with. So don't let other events or commitments interfere within reason. And consider the time spent in daily practice as an appointment with yourself. So it's no less important than any other commitments that you keep. So if we put it into our calendar and incorporate it as part of our day and act as an appointment, this can, again, kind of solidify that habit forming practice. So each part and component of the daily practice is really designed to strengthen one or more of those core skills that we just talked about. So first and foremost are mindfulness skills, because all of the others depend on, to some degree, on mindful awareness. So deep relaxation is a key to distress tolerance, which we touched on briefly when we talked about emotions, I believe, and we also included some distress tolerance information in one of the workbooks. And then self-observation and affirmation will help with emotion regulation, developing more self-esteem. And then finally, a plan of committed action will strengthen emotion regulation and interpersonal effectiveness skills. So the concept of committed action actually deserves a kind of a special note here. So your daily practices should always include a plan for something that you'll do that day or the next to solve a problem, deal effectively with a difficult situation or person, or strengthen awareness of your self-worth and resiliency. What you choose is up to you, but committed action in some form is really necessary to make a real change in your life. So far, so good. You know what you'll do for your daily practices when you'll do them, and when you'll do them, so what time of day you choose. But now comes that most important part. So that idea of persevering. So spending those 15 minutes every day strengthening your skills. So if we can easily say, okay, I'm going to take 15 minutes in the morning and do all these things and do my daily practice. But it's not necessarily about imagining that plan or creating the plan. It's actually doing the plan and creating it and sustaining it over time. So how do we persevere? So the answer is one day at a time, making sure that on this day at the right time that you do your practices, and the next day you do the same thing, and the next. So a commitment isn't something you make once, and you're kind of set for life. You don't have to think about it again. It's something that you have to consciously choose every day and keep making the choice every day. So the daily practices will significantly change the way that you think, perceive, and potentially behave. It can help you shape new responses to old struggles. And life isn't about hopes or intentions. It's actually about doing. So again, going back to that idea of if we don't choose to do, then we're not really acting upon anything. We're just kind of imagining it. So as we finish up together, I'm going to ask you to start living what you've learned. So we can all do this, maybe again, not perfectly, but enough that we can make real changes in our lives. And again, we've already started to notice some of the changes. So that can be, I guess, a reinforcer into committing to continuing to do this after group is done. So promotions, new relationships, even maybe something as winning the lottery, can give you a temporary boost of happiness, right? These are all exciting moments that we get really proud of, and it makes us really feel good. But we all have a we all have a baseline level of happiness that we quickly return to. So we kind of have to work on maybe enhancing our kind of baseline happiness levels, because again, we might experience good things in our life that bring us a kind of a boost of happiness, but at the end of the day, if our baseline level of happiness is maybe lower than the average person, that can be really tough. It makes those highs really high and maybe those lows even lower. So having more of a sustained higher baseline level of happiness requires work. So as we kind of go through this list here on the screen, these are different exercises that when we practice, and we practice daily and frequently, it can really build genuine happiness and lasting happiness. So writing down your gratitudes each day. So maybe starting with 3 things for which you're grateful for every day. Don't worry about how simple or mundane they might seem. It's just getting them down on paper. So writing gratitudes will help you identify positive aspects on even the worst of days. So it allows you to take a moment to reflect on even on the worst of times, even when you feel the worst and have a really crappy day, there are still some things to feel grateful for. And it could be as simple as a glass of water, or maybe a hug from your spouse, or even just taking a breath. Right? So it could be really simple things, but again, it just reminds you that even though you had a bad day, there's still some good things about that day too. So acts of kindness is another one. So making a conscious effort to do something nice for someone for no reason other than to just be helpful or to be nice or kind, you might be surprised how simple and how easy that act of kindness can turn around your day, but as well as the day of the person that you're kind of giving that kindness to. So exercise is another way to kind of build happiness. The positive effects of exercise are actually pretty astounding. Physically active people have increased energy, they have better immune systems, have a frequent sense of accomplishment. Exercise can reduce insomnia, it can stimulate brain growth, and it can even act as an antidepressant in some cases as well. So if jogging and lifting weights, if that's what your kind of mind goes to when you think of exercising, if that seems like too much, don't be afraid to maybe start with a walk. Like it could be a 30-minute, just a slow, easy walk around the neighborhood, or even a bike, like a really slow, easy bike ride. It doesn't have to be something really intense or vigorous, but just moving your body in some way can really induce a positive feeling. So as we talked about meditation, there's research that links it with reduced anxiety and more positive emotions. So those who meditate regularly may even permanently restructure their brains to create sustained happiness. So when you're in a more mindful meditative state, it shows, the research shows that it prevents you from entering into that depressive state because your mind is preoccupied with being in that mindful present state. So some of us have talked about that positive journaling that we talked about, I think, a couple weeks ago. So taking some time to write down positive events in your life, not even just about you or your own qualities, that's still really great as well, but even positive journaling to the sense of writing out positive things that happen in your life. Write about a fun day that you spent with friends, or a good movie that you watched, or an activity that you really enjoyed. But just taking some time to write down really good things in your day that happened, it can get you in the habit again of focusing more on the positives rather than on the negative stuff. So fostering relationships can be a really important part of building happiness. So strong social connections are thought to be one of the most powerful influences on our moods. For those who are dedicated to spending time with friends and family, they show the highest levels of happiness. If you can't see your loved ones every day, you can still send them an email or have a phone call, especially, I mean, we've all kind of experienced this need to connect in different ways with the pandemic, but it's really important to still connect with the people that we really care about and love, because that can boost our happiness over time too. If you feel like you're never seeing your loved ones, maybe that's a conscious note for you to say, hey, I need to start scheduling some time in that can be dedicated to the people that make me happy or make me feel like I'm loved, because those relationships are really important in fostering happiness. So on the screen we have breathe. So breathing is a form of patience, and patience, as we learned earlier, is a form of wisdom. So it demonstrates that we understand and accept that sometimes things must unfold in their own way, in their own time. We cultivate our attention towards our minds and our bodies when we practice mindfulness, which often involves that sense of breathing and focusing on the breath. We intentionally remind ourselves that there is no need to react because we find the mind judging all the time, or because we're agitated or frightened or anxious, or because we've been, again, practicing for a while and we haven't seen any results of that. But when we intentionally remind ourselves that that's okay, and that there's no need to kind of place any judgment on any of those things, and we give ourselves the room to have those experiences and breathe through them, then we're practicing that patience, we're practicing and endorsing that sense of wisdom that can come up from that. So in practicing mindfulness, you're also practicing taking responsibility for yourself, and to learn to trust yourself. As we talked about earlier, this is a really important part. When we are able to trust ourselves through practicing mindfulness, it's going to help us look into ourselves and trust our own decision making and feel more confident in our own skills and more capable in ourselves. And again, when we trust in ourselves, we might be able to kind of send or feel, I guess, a little bit more trusting and see the basic goodness in other people as well. Yeah. And then lastly, it's about just letting go. So breathe, trust, let go is the kind of mantra of Breelove Counselling, or the kind of underlying theme that we talk about. And again, as we talked about earlier, letting go is just that practice of maybe not holding on to things, not letting certain things pop up and just staying stuck with them. It's about, again, just as we fall asleep every night or try to fall asleep every night, which that requires letting go. It's about taking that practice of letting go and letting your mind just be, and bringing that into that daily situation as well. Okay. So that is all I have for us today. It's been such a pleasure to share our team's knowledge on mindfulness, and I really hope that as we kind of have gone through these past couple of weeks, you've all taken something away from this, and again, taken something that you can bring forward and practice in your daily life, and not just have it be kind of a situational, only temporary thing for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer any. If you have any questions kind of moving forward, you're also free to get a hold of us through email as well. So please connect with us through our website, the Instagram page, and then again, keep checking out CMHA New Brunswick for any programs or services that are moving forward and that they have coming up. But yeah, it was lovely getting to meet all of you, I guess, virtually, and connect with you guys. And I really appreciate you being a part of the group and participating. It's been wonderful kind of getting to interact. Great, Cindy. Thanks I appreciate that you liked this session in particular. Thank you guys. It means a lot that to know that you guys got something out of this as well. So I can't tell you how appreciative I am that this was helpful for you. So I really appreciate it. I'm really grateful that we got to spend this time. Again, we're always here if you need anything. So just keep us in mind, but keep practicing your mindfulness skills and keep moving forward, and everyone take care and stay safe as we move forward and in this crazy time. And we're kind of entering into a new phases of getting kind of back to a new normal. But I hope everyone stays safe and take care.